Yeah.
More like it.
Wait till the next
Yeah.
meeting.
But he's crazy. He just like
Interview the next person
Yeah.
and then
Go.
make a decision so that we do
I'm
it
gonna just
fairly.
look on the floor joists for a second.
I still think your reasoning is correct though. Make it a time.
Listen to the entire video, type out the minutes. Yeah. They pay you extra for that? I would demand double.
Actually, a little bit of a savings probably.
Hey, Carol. Is doing this. I don't want that. Do you know how I make that go away?
Oh, why it says that.
I'm gonna remind you, I'll try.
I guess I don't hear that.
Oh my
So
God.
if we go out, that would help me.
Okay, I will try to remember that, Carol. You should try to remember it also.
It was there last time, so. Don't leave without it. I guess is my point.
I'll give you a second.
It's okay.
I'm not looking at you. I'm looking at
Oh.
loose threads. Miranda put.
What hand did I have on? I put the wrong one.
I'm just staring him down.
Subconscious, Dave, I don't know.
Oh.
I'm so sorry. You
I
do
do
see
have
there's
some
something
hats that might
behind
not be
you, right?
appropriate. What if I grabbed the wrong one?
Oh, okay. Good evening and welcome to this regular meeting of the Readfield Select Board. I'll call the meeting to order at 6:31. You would please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have an adjustment to make to the agenda before we start our meeting. Okay, there's lots of stuff under my feet. We're not going to be able to do the workshop item for the emergency operations plan review. We'll just have a brief discussion, like 2 or 3 minutes. I'm planning ahead for that. Chief Mank wasn't able to be with us tonight. So I'm sorry to say we're going to shoot for 8:30 instead of 9 o'clock. I know you're all disappointed not to spend more time
Disappointed by
together,
that.
but that's the way it rolls tonight. So the first item of business is 24072, the minutes of the meeting of last November 27th.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Second that.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Another job well done. Thank you very much, Angelica. We appreciate it. Warrants 25 to 26. We'll send this one over to you, Steve.
Alrighty. So 25 was employees and payroll, and that was $46,151.76. And then 26 was our various vendors, and that was $425,586.16. The biggies took up almost all of that total was the RSU payment, 338,000 and change. And then Scott Horn for $46,162 roughly. And that was another 10% on the winter plowing and maintenance. So that's a regular payment. And then the other ones of note would be, I'd say the Dave Morrow for electrical work at the library, $25.75, sorry, 59 cents. And that in conversation with Eric is more than they'd expected to spend there. The upgrade of the panel wasn't anticipated, and there's more lights that need to be replaced than what they thought. So they're probably going to wind up taking some money from the library reserve because it's important stuff to get done to be able to reopen those rooms. And then we paid Goral Palmer. Those are the engineers for the sidewalk. project. We paid them $11,337. And 80% of that comes back from DOT as the grant. So that's money paid out ahead of time, but we get 80% of that back at some point. And then the Kennebec Regional Development Authority, which is First Park. That's the second half of our annual payment to them, and it was $8,115. And Eric thinks that, last year we broke even on First Park, and this year he expects that we will hopefully get a refund of more than that amount and more than we paid in. And so it will be on the plus side of First Park and the first time ever.
First
Ever,
time.
ever.
By the year 3000, we'll be even.
Totally, right? Yeah, that's right.
Nope.
So- Oh, wow, ouch. Debbie Downer over there, come on.
I'm
Well, you-
guessing 15 years.
Yeah.
That's
You
my guess.
consider all that money we spent out with interest compounded, yeah, nah.
Let's not start. That will take up that 30 minutes you just.
But we're
That's
glad,
right.
we're glad we were helping out with whomever with that
That's right.
project.
Back on track here. And the last one of note I would say is Hussey Communications. They do the maintenance for the antennas that they use for the radios, the fire department and the radios. And that was $1,959. Oh boy, I'm having trouble with the numbers today. $1,959. That's what I meant to say. And there you go. Total of $425,586.16.
I'll make a motion to approve warrants 25 and 26, in total sum of $471,737.92.
Second.
Thank you. We have a fabulous report out. Thank you, Steve. A motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
I just have one. So the sidewalk, Goral Palmer, is that all Church Road? That
Yeah, oh,
kind?
yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, Girl Palmer is exclusively on that project.
Anything else? All those in favor? It is unanimous. Moving on to communications, select board communications. If any member of the board has general information they'd like to present.
I think I do.
Okay, you looked expecting. I'm just checking.
I just want to say, good job, Dale Potter, and her team for the historic preservation, Christmas Through the Ages. It was a huge success, I believe. A lot of work went into it. I think every of the, I believe it was 5 locations, took it very seriously, did a lot of research, did a lot of preparation. We had over 100 people go through the tour. And Dale had it scheduled down to the second, and I think it all went very smoothly. So we haven't heard anything but good positive comments, and I think it was good for the Historical Society and the Union Meeting House. Eric looked completely dapper, as did his entire family, dressed to right in custom with his period that he was doing. His house was immaculate and beautiful. It's a lot of fun.
Well, I
Good
don't
for
know.
the
When I
community.
was talking to Eric this morning, he professed to be exhausted from his acting job so
Thoroughly.
it was
I was
hard work
gonna-
apparently.
I was gonna have a
Being a
pajama day
Victorian.
yesterday, and then the church had a thing, so yeah, I didn't get my pajama day.
Well, it's not just doing the event. It's completely redoing your house so that there's nothing around and
And-
it's spotless.
And I had
And then you have
two
people
measures.
tramps through with their dirty shoes
Oh,
and make it all dirty again.
I was mopping big the next, so we had World War II in the front of the house and the 1950s in the back guest house. So I had 7 rooms and 3 hallways to like clean and decorate and, yeah, it was, yeah, exhausted.
And I'll just add to that, that the library staff did an amazing job. Melissa Small was great as the daughter of the head of the library board, who was the mother on Patience Courier. They did a great skit. So each location had a different take on how they did things. It was really successful. And I actually had a person ask me if the town could spend more money on sanding and salting the sidewalks so they'd be more passable. And I said, you really want me to spend more money? We just left it at
It
that,
was
but
treacherous, but
just in one spot. It was
Mostly,
bad. It
yeah.
wasn't bad.
I
Great
think that
day.
was at my house.
Yeah.
And I went down the sidewalk, and I said, why don't these people shovel their sidewalk in front of mine?
Anybody else? Sean?
Yeah, I was also gonna thank the library for the tree lighting event and thank the kids from the middle school that came down and sang us some carols. And thanks Steve for donating the beautiful tree that was there also. I'm pretty sure we're glad Lee wasn't in the building for the cookies after. We might have exceeded the amount of children in this room that I think I've ever seen in here, but it was pretty awesome.
They
And-
weren't all here at once. I'm sure some of them were
Yeah,
coming
there
and
was like,
going.
yeah, they were coming in and out. Yeah, for sure. But it was really good. It was nice to see that many people come out for that event. So thanks everybody involved.
It was very nice. Okay, thank you, everybody. We'll move on to staff communications, a town manager's report and a treasurer's report. Eric, did they get sent out today?
Yep, they did, around
Okay.
3:30.
I'll update my computer.
But I'll start by talking about the next awesome community event, which is the Wreaths Across America event that's happening on Saturday, the 16th. Is that right? Yeah, the
Yes.
16th at noon here at the town office. And so that's a ceremony where we do laying of wreaths here. Yeah, last year, or the year before, it was just gorgeous because we had those huge snowflakes coming down. It was just really pretty.
Last year.
With the brick, just a really nice, cold, bitter, but lovely event. So I think this Saturday should be a little bit nicer. So that's coming up. We also have holidays coming up. As you're all aware, the office and library will be closed on Monday, December 25th and Monday, January 1st for those two holidays. I have been working with KV Cog and a company out of New Gloucester to move forward the amendments to the land use ordinance. We have KV Cog doing some support role and the firm out of New Gloucester taking the lead on doing the ordinance revisions. Each one of those is probably going to be $4,000 to $5,000 depending on how it works. But we have $10,000 from the state of Maine to spend on our revision of our ordinance. So that's within budget and it looks like it's not going to be an unfunded mandate. So that's a positive. Doesn't always work that way. Let's see, several budget related items is ongoing. We've started that months ago, but really starting to ramp up and pull together pieces that are essential. Some of the capital stuff I'll talk about later, but also we need to get some information out to the boards and committees so they can get their budgets together. That's going to be happening. One big thing that I'm looking at is trying to get a fully developed plan together for that community programming coordinator position. That's what I'm calling it. You guys can call it, tell me what to call it. But the idea that we would have a part-time recreation and community programming coordinator. The budget committee was very interested in that idea. They were just, when they talked to me, adamant they wanted to have good due diligence. They wanted to see a job description. They wanted to see a budget. They wanted to see schedules. They wanted to see all those things that the voters would probably want to see too, to make sure that if we are spending money on something like that, on a position that we haven't had in the past in recent history, because we did have one 25 years ago, actually, but we haven't had one in recent history. So that's going to be a big part of what we're looking at, is to make sure that we know what we're talking about and we know we need it. The assessor and his firm completed the first pass at our revaluation. It was a dry run. It was 50 parcels. This was like just a test run to see how things went. It's just about 3% of our total number of parcels. And they went through and they kind of figured out where the bugs were, how it was going to work as far as data collection. So when the spring comes, because we don't want them out taking pictures when it's like this. We don't want them out trying to get to places when it's like this. So they'll be taking the winter and preparing, but they'll be ready to rock and roll in the spring and get right into that. And we'll be supporting them with a lot of public education and awareness as we get closer to that full start of the reevaluation process. And then we have a staff meeting scheduled for December 21st. I've invited Catherine to speak to the staff briefly as chair. and to help present the baskets that you all contribute to. So thank you for that. We really appreciate it. Moving on to roads, traffic, parking, safety generally. Winter conditions continue to disappoint us. It's another wet start. Lots of materials being put out. It's nearly impossible to plow the gravel roads. But that's come to be the norm. And so we're dealing with that as best we can. But I did have some people say that they really wanted the gravel roads to be treated differently. And I said, the only real other option is to not plow them. And that's not really an option. We have to get that material off so that we don't have the ice pack and that we can have a surface that we can work with. So we're doing the best we can, but it is challenging. The work that was done this fall by John Cushing on the road edges that we put a fair amount of money into did seem to make a difference with this storm. If you remember, it was last year we had a sloppy Christmas storm that blew out things and cost us $60,000. This last time we had 3.5 inches of rain or so. It did much better. So that's a positive from my perspective. We are working on the Church Road sidewalk, as Carol noted. January 16th at 6:30 p.m. is that public hearing. We're going to have lots of communication happening around that. I'm working on a draft easement for the Nickerson Hill intersection. The focus of that is to make sure that we have an acknowledgement that the town road is on that property. It goes with the deed and will be acknowledged that that's part of the parcel. And also make sure that we have rights to do maintenance on the road and to the signs and other structures that are there in the future. So wrapping that up. Then we have the moving on to maintenance. We heard a little bit about the library, the money going for electrical work. The staff have been pretty well busy splitting their time between that, winter preparations and routine maintenance work that has to get done. But between everybody working together, with special thanks to Catherine and the library volunteers, we've been able to get that front room essentially done. The last piece is the floor, but that really can't happen until we get some other things taken care of. But it's starting to look really, really nice. The lighting's going in. It's going to be a fantastic addition. And I will say that my thought is that if we do get a part-time or three-quarter-time position for community programming, that building would be the right place to house that because the library is essentially a community center in its own right already, and we're really at capacity here. We could do a few gymnastics, somersaults to get someone in, but if we have available space, I think that would be a great way to bring a lot of things together and find some synergy. And the last piece is transfer station. Staffing has normalized at the transfer station. We've seen most employees there most days, every day the last couple of weeks. And then Karen and I met with a representative from H.E. Callahan to talk about the possibility of a canopy at that site to cover the equipment to help protect it. That's something we've been planning for. So what we're looking at is getting assistance with helping us scope out that project because we don't know what kind of building we want. We expect it's probably a metal, metal truss type system, but what that might look like and what that might cost, we don't know. So we're looking for some technical expertise. But H.E. Callahan is a good fit, I think, for this project because they're not really an engineering firm. They're a construction company, but they have some engineering background. They have engineers on staff and they can coordinate with people. So we're not just jumping in with an engineer like we did with the fire station and finding out that, it's not quite the right approach. So I'm hoping this is a better way to do it. And I expect so. H.E. Callahan had done our work on the shared dam in Maranacook, that outlet dam, with the town of Winthrop, and that was a multiple $100,000 project, and they nailed it. They also helped us with the dam up here by Torsi. So experienced company. So that's my town manager's report. I think I got everything.
So I have a couple questions and anyone else can ask. So up on P Ridge, there are posts now. Are they getting a guardrail or are they just the posts?
Those are posts. Yep. So that's how that's going to be. Yep.
Okay, so that's just to keep people from cutting farther in.
Yes. Also, it's just a visual barrier to help keep people, away. Also, help keeps the snow plows from getting too close. So all of those things. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So that's complete.
It is, and the reason it looks like that is because when it's like that, it's a signpost and not a fence. If it was a fence, we would be violating our own protocol as far as having fences in the right of way. So we do have special state exemptions for fences, or excuse me, for signposts. So we're able to thread the needle on that one and keep the property owner happy, so.
Okay. And then a comment on the community programming coordinator. I think we want to be careful in how and to whom we're justifying the position. Because I think it's the decision-making of this board, whether there's a new position. Of course, it's the budget committee's decision to look, or job to look at all of the financial impacts of that. So I just want to make sure we kind of keep those things separated.
It's a very good point.
So is that recreation? Is that what we're talking?
The what?
So community programming coordinator, is that
Right.
recreation?
Yes.
Okay.
And then I would suggest, which I'm sure you are already doing, this isn't a new expense per se. A lot of this expense is already in several other positions that we're looking to roll into one and expand somewhat. So it's not like we're creating a new job with all new money. Correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a big part of that is gonna be the beach superintendent position. That's gonna be rolled into this. And also, as I said, I mean, we've had rec coordinators in the past, in this town. It's just been that we've had volunteers who have been exceptional recently, but we can't expect them to go to the lengths that they would have to keep this thing running, so.
And I assume that Dave and Sean will be giving us some input over the next couple of months on your research and findings. Perfect.
So Eric, I'm sorry, something you just said. Did you say we had a rec coordinator paid in the past?
Yep.
We
Yeah,
did?
we did. It was probably 25 years ago.
Oh,
It
wow.
was well
Okay, that's a
before my
long time.
time.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's not unheard of, I guess. is my-
Okay,
my
thank
point,
you.
yeah.
Okay, anybody else? Okay. Treasurer's report.
Okay, this is for the month of November. I'll just talk about investments. We do have really quickly here, one of our CDs, our first laddered CD is coming to maturity in February. So we want to think in January about whether or not we want to reinvest that money. I strongly recommend we do. It was the 500,000, the big nugget there. And by the time that matures, we'll have made $12,500 off of it. So that's good. That's very good for us. So I recommend that we do that again. I expect we'll still see rates similar to the 5% range, and whether we put that in a CD or a high yield investment account of some kind, that's still, secured FDIC and all that. I think we should do that again. The audit is underway. We expect to have some draft numbers in December or January. I'm saying the end of January. But Teresa is actually getting ready to kind of finalize some of those individual spreadsheets that we use to build the actual audit document. So we'll have some good numbers there. But we're making much better progress than we were last year. So I'm really happy to report that. And bonds, we did receive the fire truck bonds in November, and those were immediately put towards filling in the backfilling the general fund. Because if you remember, we had spent out of the general fund in anticipation of those bond proceeds coming in. That happened. Everything's back to the way it should be. And just as far as the overall month is looking, there's some variability on the month-to-month comparison. So November of this year compared to November of last year. But if you look at that year to date, everything seems to be settling in the way it should. We did see an increase in motor vehicles this month, which was nice, but we're still down a little bit for the year. And I have Teresa looking at a bit of an anomaly. We had, most times, we have receipts that come in for motor vehicles, so that's the money we take in, and it should be our share plus the state's share. And so when we compare the revenues that we keep to the receipts, we should be getting less revenue than receipts because we're just accounting for our share. But this month we had like a $3,000 or $4,000 difference in the reverse. So I think it might have something to do, and Teresa thinks it might have something to do with the online motor vehicle payments and things like that. So we're gonna have to just scope that out a little bit more, but it was a kind of a red flag. I said, that's not right. So we're working on that one. Otherwise, expenses seem to be on track. We're a little bit ahead or a little bit behind in departments, but that's pretty standard given the kind of the pacing that each of those departments has through the year. So that's my report for the month of November, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate that.
All right.
And we will, nice job. Boards, committees, commissions, and departments. We have received minutes. Oh, I read them before. We have the first draft from the Connectivity Committee, and we have an approved copy and a draft copy from the Fairgrounds Working Group. So thank you to everybody for getting those in promptly and for doing all that great work. We have one member of the public here. Would you like to speak to the board for anything? And we have one member online, if you would like to say anything. Okay, so we have no public communication from the public. We'll move on to appointments, reappointments, and resignations. 24-074, consider the appointment of an alternate member to full membership on the planning board. And I'm guessing that's why one person is here now. Why am I not seeing this? Okay, so does anybody know what page we're on? Oh, there it is.
14.
Thank you.
I'll just say that we did want to handle this as clearly and cleanly as we could. We learned a little bit from the library appointment process where we had some confusion. So to make this as clear and fair as possible, we did request a little bit of a summary from each of the two potential appointees. Both are currently serving on the planning board as an alternate capacity. And we have just brief statements from both. Brendan is able to be here, but John is unable to be here. So we have all the information, but I'll leave it to the board about how you would like to proceed with this process.
Do we know if John is going to be available at our next meeting?
We don't. We do not. No. That was something that I was supposed to follow up on. So I apologize that I didn't do that.
Well, this is Sean. I'd like to go ahead and make the appointment tonight, and mostly because they both submitted something about who they are and what they do, and that was the basis of which I made my decision when we did the school board appointment. And so it's nice if people come, but it's not going to change my thoughts.
I agree.
Well, and we did just interview both of these persons.
They were here just a couple of years ago, right? Yep.
At that same meeting, which was November, October?
Not long ago.
Not long ago.
This year.
Yes, wow. This fall, no less. So yes, and I think a lot of the things that we said at the time, this isn't particularly cogent to this appointment, but we had talked about trying to have diversity on boards. And committees. So on each board, not just that one time for one board. I think it's important that we still consider that, because there really isn't any other criteria other than people's willingness and their experience. So
It's like you had a segue for me there, the way you said that. I appreciate that.
Took the words right out of your
I know,
mouth.
I'm just gonna go fast then. So I'd like to make a motion to approve Brandon as the permanent position to the planning board, and I forget the dates, but and my reasoning is because of the change in diversity. We have a couple lawyers on there. I'd like to see somebody different.
That was going to be my question. So I wanted a refresher on who's on the
We have people with
planning
real
board already.
estate and
real
that
estate
sort of-
background and
that
lawyers
sort of stuff.
already. And
Yeah,
okay.
so it'd be nice to have somebody with a different
Yeah.
scope and
All right.
background.
I'd like to second that, and my reasoning would be, I believe Brandon was the first one to apply for the planning board when there were open seats. He also has property that's in agriculture, and we talk about comprehensive plan and agricultural property and all that, he's got a very integral understanding of that. And he's been in this town for 35 years without any absences, like long-term absences. So for all of the above reasons, he's, and he, I think, is one of the only people in town that read the entire comprehensive plan. So that's not any small
Well,
feat.
He says he did.
And he comes to meetings of all kinds, not, he sits in and he's attended all kinds of meetings, on several boards. He's definitely been involved.
What were the official dates, Eric? Would it be from tonight through?
It's a 5-year appointment. It's
Yeah,
said somewhere.
It's
in-
finishing the term, and actually, I'm not sure
5
where that paper is, because it should have been included, but I don't see it in the packet.
You still
Oh, I-
okay with that?
I told him up front.
Starting
You
now.
told him up front, okay. You warned him?
I
Fair
do just
warning.
want to mention, because you've said this several times, Carol, we don't actually know how many people have read the whole comprehensive
I
plan. So I
said-
think it's a rather presumptive to
Okay.
say that. I read it through twice.
Good, that makes up for
because-
me, because I did
because I
not read
was-
it through all the way.
I
So-
tried.
I was proofreading, and after the changes were made, I read it again.
Sounds like you.
And so I applaud you for reading it, because that is not, it's not easy reading, and it's
No, it
long.
is
It's
not.
really long. Do we have the dates yet?
I'm looking for that right now, but it's been taken off the website, so.
I'm guessing it's
Um,
a period from tonight through June 30th, 2028,
Because the last time it was
through 2028.
2028.
It- Right, because we just appointed George from
Yeah.
alternate to
Permanent.
permanent,
Yeah,
right?
I think
This
the way to
year, and
do
it was
this
a
without-
5-year term, so it
without-
has to be
Yeah. I was saying the way to do this without causing trouble would be to just, to
finished out.
appoint
the
him to
term.
finish Mr. O'Connor's appointment.
Just put it that way
Yeah.
for now, and then
Yeah,
it'll
and I'll-
probably be 2028.
I'll
Formalities
figure out
in there.
why I missed that. I'm not really got, I don't have my
Until
stuff
his
together
term is
tonight, so.
Okay,
Um,
did anybody second that yet?
It's gonna be out, yes,
Carol
Carol did. He'll be outlasting everyone who's here.
So Angelica, was that clear for the minutes?
So clear.
But replace George O'Connor.
Oh, I have a motion in a second, and we've had some discussion. Is there any further discussion? Okay. So based on what was presented and the discussion that we've had, all those who are in favor? It is unanimous.
Cool.
welcome.
Oh, No, no,
Thank you.
thank you.
And I'm sure the planning board thanks you.
And we are
Okay.
zooming through this agenda and we're skipping something. It's so good.
Oh, now just don't jinx
Easy,
anything.
don't- yeah, I
Let's
was
be
gonna- don't jinx it.
reasonable here.
Calm down.
All right, we're now
Stay
into
calm.
old business for 30 minutes. Let's see, we're supposed to be 35 minutes
Supposed to be
in. We're only
40
3
minutes in.
minutes ahead.
40 minutes in.
40 minutes
Do
ahead.
not argue about that.
Item 24-043, hear and consider an update on the fairgrounds project.
It's pretty
Steve.
straightforward. I'm gonna channel my inner Catherine and say that you probably already know this because it's in the packet, but not everybody reads the packet, so I'm gonna say it anyway. And basically, the highlights are that Regina Leonard, who's the landscape architect who worked with us originally, came for a site visit on the 1st of December. And the purpose of that was to show her the location of the basketball court, which had not been in there last time. And discuss also potential implications of maybe enlarging the softball field and make it usable for all ages. So they showed it to her. She spent a little more time after they left. There's no decisions made. There's just a site visit. And that was Eric, Rob Peel, and Jerry Bly joined her there. And she's going to provide sketches before our next meeting, which is next Monday, the 18th. And she'll also be there on Zoom. Eric's also arranged for Rick Dutton, who's an engineer with Mainland Development, to provide cost estimates for the project. And we're going to meet this Thursday, I think, right? You and
That's
I
right.
and Regina with him at 2:00, just to discuss that, the scope of that. And Eric had asked him to provide both, high end estimates and low end estimates, varying amounts of fill maybe, and, different thicknesses of fill. And I think we also
Work in-
discussed the idea of
Work in kind.
one work in
labor.
kind, right? Like, what would happen if you know,
Yeah, we asked him to do a split so that what he's
Right.
gonna provide for pricing has labor and material, type.
Separated, right.
Separated.
Yeah.
It might just be formulaic, given, common numbers, but I'm hoping that we can get some experience in there and get that refined some,
so yeah, that's what's happening.
Awesome, thank you. Item 24-044 here, and consider an update on the Church Road sidewalk project. Is there anything new, Eric?
Just that we have, well, it's not new, but the meeting, January 16th, we're not quite ready to send out the public notices. I did include my draft letter to residents on Church Road, so you all can see what type of communication we're going to be having directly with them. But this is a big deal, and it is a community-wide question, because, even though it's 80-20, with only 20% coming out of tax dollars and 80% coming from federal tax dollars, which I guess also came from us, but if we don't take it, somebody else will. But anyway, that cost is going to be distributed throughout the town, so people should know and be aware, and feel comfortable with it if they so choose. So we're going to make sure that there's a lot of publicity around that. The engineers are moving forward with their design. I got an email today. They want to know, have me confirm the drains that might be coming in, because they're getting to the point now where they're looking at how people's house drains are going to come into the drainage that goes under that sidewalk. So they really are getting into that finer detail that lets us know whether the project's feasible and helps us get a reliable cost estimate. So that work is ongoing, and I'm getting more and more excited about seeing some really solid plans on the 16th.
Thank you. Anybody, anything? Okay, item 24-047, select board action item reporting. Who wants to start?
I'll start.
Okay,
I haven't progressed at all since I last meeting on the board thing, so I'll just
so winter's
fess up
here,
to that
Steve.
right up. I know, don't
Winter's
rub
here,
me,
we
I
want to walk
know.
inside, come on.
No, I will commit to having something done by our next meeting, I promise.
I too will confess.
Oh, wow.
I didn't make any progress the last
I too
week.
will confess.
We have
I
to,
will 100% concur with that. Nope, after last
Ouch.
weekend.
It's
Sean,
Christmas.
you do-
yeah, I did a little.
And
but
Save
I-
us, save us, dude.
I
Hey,
feel
you
like-
know what? At least we're all saying something and reminding ourselves that, hey, you know, we do
Right.
have this to do, so we will get to it. If we never talk about it, we will not do it.
No, it
So-
is very good to do this. 'cause
Keeps
it
it up
makes me
there.
like,
Right.
come on.
There's no
get
scolding
going.
here, except we
Kind
will
of.
need some numbers from you guys to help support the budget decision. And I don't mean numbers, but you were gonna ask some people about
Some
the number of
groups.
hours that people were spending doing various things, so.
Yeah, so I've started the conversation with rec. But they're starting basketball season, so they're really busy. And we're gonna attend the library meeting, but I forgot what date that is, but it's in January. Before they meet the budget committee, so, I don't think we had planned anybody else really to talk to. Off the top of my head, we heard from Dennis. I was gonna talk to Dennis, but I feel like he told us it all. And he said he would share his folder with me so I could kind of see the scope of that as well. So I think we're veering towards the right page so that when, I think that budget section is late January. Am I right, Eric?
Yeah, and there is a library meeting coming up sooner than that. I think it's this Wednesday.
They had it on their they told Catherine and I. we met
It was
with them,
January.
that they were gonna have a
Okay.
meeting about next steps in January. I'm pretty sure it was their first one in January.
I'll confirm and we'll make sure you guys have that. Yeah.
Okay. All right, so I guess, yes. So I have gotten in touch with Paula Clark. I'm not sure, Eric, how it worked, but I sent an email to her via the public online thing. You know, when you go to the town website. and
Yeah, the
it
form,
was
yeah.
not received.
Yeah, no, and.
So
I
I don't know if I should like send one to myself and see if I get it. But anyway, Eric followed
yeah.
through for me on that, and I have spoken with Paula via email, and Eric and I are going to meet None of the ordinances that I was asking about that are very old for review or revision have been pulled into the land use ordinance, so we do know that. It may be a case where these are just going to be reviewed by us and recommended that they are fine. Or I think there's one that Paul is interested in maybe having us revise, whether that would be this year or not. We don't know yet, but once we meet, we'll have a better feeling for that. But at least we're making some progress on that front. And then I just wanted to report out on the library if I can. So I did spend a bunch of hours down there. A few other people spent some time as well. The room is really coming together. It's very amazing. What I really wanted to say though is that the work that the town employees have been doing is exceptional. It's an old building. They're not trying to make it new. They're trying to repair things and keep it as historical as possible, but making it practical and safe without dust and fumes being there, for the public, and making the space really workable. And the back room is really coming together now. The library,
Bad room or the good room?
the bad room, the one that had missing wall and ceiling, that room now has walls and ceilings, and they are getting built out so that they are able to be usable. They're not going to be beautiful like these walls, but they will be very nice. And the library board is all set to get the closets emptied and have the guys work on the closets once they get that other room done. And so I think they really weren't expecting us to actually get this done because it's been taking like 20+ years. So understandably, so they're pretty excited about what they're going to do with the space and who's going to use it and how it's going to be used and when it'll be open for use. And it's opened up all sorts of other issues, like if there are people upstairs, does there need to be a volunteer or a staff member upstairs? Does it matter if they're older people or younger people in terms of supervision? Should it only be used when the library is already open or not? And accessibility issues and all sorts of things. So they're pretty happy that they have all these new things to consider. So this is really great, and a huge thanks to Eric for making this project happen. I mean, I know other
I'm
things.
just following directions.
I know other things probably aren't getting done because this is getting done, but it's fabulous to be able to give this building to the whole town. And at the tree lighting, I had washed the windows that day, and then they went up and they put candles in the windows. We haven't had candles in the windows up there forever.
It looked really nice.
And it was like, yes. So, okay, enough prattling. We are still way ahead of schedule. 24-071, consider draft revisions to the warrant article petition policy. I'll just start with this and let you know that Sean and I met with Eric the day after our last meeting, and we hashed this back and forth and around and inside and outside. And pretty much what's here is what the three of us had come up with. So,
Some
where
comments the night before.
yes, yes, right. But so don't just throw Eric under the bus if you're not happy with it. It was Sean and me trying to also have our hands in the pot, so.
I'll just say that this mostly reflects the discussion that was held
Yeah.
at the meeting. You left me with a little bit of uncertainty, and that's why that discussion with Sean and Catherine was helpful to kind of narrow things down a bit. But the big changes are that the approach was taken that rather than being 10% for the first pass and then 5% after that, what you had discussed was having just 5% across the board, so a lower threshold. And this kind of policy change to me looks like, rather than having a bigger burden to start, and then having no real, I won't say no accountability, but a lot less checking in by just having to send a letter. Now there's a little bit lower threshold, but there's more accountability and more checking in. So I think it's a shift. I don't think it's a bad shift. And then the other piece that goes along with this is that in order for folks to continue to receive those funds, they do need to do two things. They need to make sure that they follow the policy and show up when they're supposed to and do the petition. but they also need to present, their information in the form of a request letter that we have been getting, but that wasn't in writing, so now it is. They have to submit a request letter, and then if it's approved at town meeting, they also have to submit an invoice. So that way we have those front end and back end documents coming in from the nonprofits. So this really does hold them to a higher standard, I think. So I'm happy with the way this is looking. I think we got pretty much everything. The one other big change was that 5%. There was a discussion about whether that was too much or too little. And so given the kind of stopgap that we have on that third year, it seemed as though offering that 5% in any 1 year. So what that means is over the course of a request, someone could start off with 1 year, have their initial request, 5%, and then by that next year, they would automatically have to come back and request a new amount. And it's only there if they request it, right? So if they want 2%, that's great. That's fine. We'll give them that. If they don't want any increase, which oftentimes is the case, that's fine too. But that was a change that happened since the last meeting following that discussion. And that pretty much summarizes the changes that were made.
And you also included that we may group them together on the warrant.
Yes, that was from the first discussion though, but yeah, that's also a change from the original policy.
Right.
Yeah.
So can I just see if I follow what it is now? So they're gonna be on the, included in an article for a year, but then if it gets passed by percentage, they don't have to be in the article for 2 more years, but they still have to apply annually? Or no?
No, they
It
have
hurts
to
my head to
submit,
try to follow this.
so they submit their first petition.
Right.
If it's voter approved,
Right.
then the next 2 years, they just have to send a letter.
Right, that's kind of what I said. They don't,
And-
they
and
don't
that's
get
what they
voted on
do.
again.
That's what they do now.
Okay,
Only now they only have to send a letter every year in perpetuity. So this could go on for 20 years, just sending a letter.
so how many times does the same thing end up on an article?
It's voted on every year.
So that's not gonna change.
Right,
No,
so it still gets
all
voted on.
voted
every
on.
year.
Still go on.
All
the
spending
warrant.
gets voted on
Okay.
every year.
Okay, thank you.
But the board does have the option of grouping similar items, so
Okay.
that's a change too.
Okay,
So you might put Marana Cook Lake and the Cobussy watershed and 30 Mile River
In Torsi.
and Torsi Water Pond Association all in one article. Or we can leave them separately, doesn't matter. But so the
Right,
bigger
this is really
change,
Option to do.
right, which is what we're trying to do, is to open up more options.
so they need to get the signatures every 3 years.
Yes,
Okay, I'm like, what am I missing with the 3 years? So it's
Right.
voted on every year. They need the petition with so many numbers every 3 years.
right.
Gotcha. Thank you.
And then that also offers up something that they haven't had, which is that on that third year, well, I guess they could do it any year, but on the third year, they can make a jump in their request because they're going back to the voters. So if they find they're serving a lot more people in town
True.
and they want to ask for more money, it will automatically go to that, so they can request. But I guess in any year, they could choose to do that. But they haven't.
They really
So-
haven't. And a lot of people have been very willing to voluntarily come and talk to the budget committee, but I think that this is probably a good pass. I wouldn't want this to be any more complicated than this. I think that would be too much. I think that right now we've kind of found a good balancing point and addressed some concerns that were out there. So I'm pretty comfortable with it.
And we did take out the part about having to come and meet with us in person. Because the discussion Sean and I had with Eric is who is that benefiting?
Yeah.
If we already know these organizations, or the budget committee knows, if they present to the budget committee, it's only the people who will be at the meeting or might read the minutes. If they're at our meeting, then anyone who watches the tape could learn, but how many people is that? And, to your point, Carol, it seems like that was maybe asking too much of the organizations, but to get the signatures, then they're reaching at least somewhere near 100 people each year. So that, I think, spreads the word more.
It just seemed like having to appear at all these municipalities in person was a real challenge.
But I think that's part of what they do, right, Sean? These organizations, they have a person in the position who, it's the giving department or whatever they call it. So,
So I do want to clarify, and make sure that I have this right, because in item 4, and this is every third year, right? So this is part of that petition process. It still says that they're required to come and talk to the select board. But I can certainly strike that if you prefer to just have that for the budget committee. Again, it
Was-
wouldn't be every year, it's just every time the petition process happens.
Are you
Is
saying
that-
they may or they need to
what
This-
says
this
requested,
is-
Requested.
Yeah,
request? So that means
yeah. So
and
it's,
it's required before we
That's
can
it.
give support. Is that something that was in this process already?
this was already there, yeah. Anything that's in black was already there. But that's a change that you could change that to say May. And that way it's the option of the board to bring them for an informational session. But I'm happy to make the change either way. I just wanted to point out that that was a little bit different than what you were talking about.
Yes, it is. What do you think, Sean? You have more experience with this than the
Well,
rest of
what
us.
if it's a new startup that we want to learn about because we don't know? What if it's I don't want to name any company, but there's some in my mind that if they came to town, I'd be like, yeah, we want them to come and tell us why, because they're terrible. So yeah, I definitely have crossed paths with some of them. So, but I think we want to leave it as an option. I think it's okay if we could word it, we may request, or I just don't want to, I think we should.
How about changing is required to maybe say should or maybe required?
Technically, even
Requested?
the way it's written right there is not, it
doesn't
doesn't
say
say
should.
it's required.
Yeah,
says
it
it's
doesn't
required.
Well, it says it's required before we
Maybe
can give a
so.
recommendation of support on the
Right.
second line. So if we
Yeah.
change that to may be required.
Yeah, or you could just strike that whole second part of that sentence because it seems kind of redundant because of course the select board has to make a recommendation on these things. So, I mean, if you're requesting them to come before you to make a discussion or to make a presentation, then that second part really isn't necessarily necessary.
So
Yeah.
then would you include the budget committee in the first sentence? Because like that's what's added to the second sentence is the budget committee, but it's not in
Yeah,
the first.
I guess what I would do is condense this whole paragraph and have a sentence that says that the nonprofits entity is requested to appear before the select board and budget committee, a period. You know, is basically, whatever was the last part of that, it says,
Yep, I think that's perfect.
Don't add nonprofit
Just-
in there.
yeah, just kind of cut it down and say that maybe even say maybe requested.
So I think I'm hearing that we're comfortable with everything in this policy, except we would like number 4 under policy.
Leaving it
reworked.
optional.
Okay, so
To
Eric,
have
can-
some optional flavor to it.
I will make it optional. We'll
Okay.
bring it
And then
back.
if you change the required to requested.
Yep.
that doesn't-
Maybe.
okay, so then we will look at this again at our next meeting, hopefully for the last time. And it'll just be item 4 that will have been changed.
Mhm.
I think that's good. And of course, may be requested or is requested to appear, and we have any information that this organization is sketchy, they don't appear, then it's our responsibility to make a decision of, we do not recommend this article.
Right.
Typically, we have not made recommendations on these giving articles in the town warrant because they're donations. And so we haven't felt that it's our right to tell people how to donate their money. Whereas everything else is an expense for something that the town is spending on. It's not a request from an outside organization. So. just
Well,
keep
I've
that
got
in
pretty
mind.
clear direction. Thanks.
Okay. Moving on, we are going to just touch on the emergency operations plan review. I I was talking with Eric about this earlier today. The required training is an in-person training. And to date, I'm the only one who has done that, and I did it a number of years ago. Don't know where that signature page was, Eric, but I thought I saw it.
That training.
The training is on
Thought
page
Didn't
29.
we do that last?
Are you talking about the?
No, this
training?
is an in-person training.
Yeah, it wasn't in person during COVID. That's when I did it.
So something has changed, and the level that we have to be trained at is a class that you have to take.
So it's the G402, and that's new the last couple of years.
Okay.
But basically, you have to either do it at a town office or go to the county offices. And we have emergency management directors from the county typically giving instruction on the operational framework that municipalities and elected officials would be operating under in an emergency. So that's what the training is for, and it's specific, and it replaces some of these ICS courses, the 100, 700, all that stuff that Lee and I have to take still, but that's okay. We need the extra training because we're held to it. We have more responsibilities. But I think it would be good, honestly, for everybody to do that. And so I'm going to be working with some other surrounding towns and the county to see if we can't get a training put together this winter, so we can all be on the same page with that. I think that would be the ideal outcome.
I'll even take it again.
So this is not Zoom.
This is in person, yeah.
When we did it last time, we did it in the basement of the fire station. So you know this was a while ago because we haven't had a room down there to use for a while. And it was a presentation thing. And then when you finished being at the presentation, that is your certification. There's not like a test to take. With the online things, you have to go through and answer the little questions. And if you get them wrong, you go back and re-answer them till you get them right. So it's mainly a being thoughtful thing. But I think that's a great idea. Do we have an actual EMA director in Kennebec County again now or not?
I'm not certain.
Because I know the official director was on paid leave, administrative leave. So I don't know.
Is this stuff all pretty, I mean, there's just like a lot of appendices and stuff. Are these all just standard across like municipalities? This isn't, a lot of it's probably not unique to Readfield, is that right?
That's right. Yeah, a lot of this is pretty general. The way that folks are expected to operate and cooperate during an emergency is pretty standardized. So that's a good observation.
And it is important to know. And so Lee had requested that we have a discussion, and Eric and I talked about it and agreed that we would have the discussion when we do meet with Lee, rather than having it tonight. And the discussion was to do a little, so now you have a warning of what it's going to be, but to have a conversation about how things went in the Lewiston crisis, because that's a really good training exercise. I know in Farmington, within a week, they had done a whole revamp of their thing because there were just a lot of things that occurred during then that they hadn't really considered previously. And so they did some training right away so that they would be on top of things more. But there was some information that came out at the beginning in the first 12 hours that came from quote town officials that wasn't accurate in the end. And I'm not saying that to be critical of anybody, but that's my own personal experience with all that information. And so we have to be really careful as town officials who we talk to, when we talk to someone, and what we say. And I think that's where Lee's coming from. And that's why it's important that we all have this training so that we realize that, you're emotional, you're involved somehow, and somebody calls and, well, I haven't been able to reach anybody else. So Dave, please just give me some information. And so, you feel bad for them and you want people to know. And so you say stuff, and then there's just protocol for all of that. And I think it's important to have Lee be there because he's the head of that for our town. So I think for us to have a conversation, he needs to be part of that. So.
Yep, and we'll be talking about other aspects of hazards in Readfield, the fact that we have more higher speed train traffic coming through is something we'll be considering. And of course, the severe weather emergencies that seem to be coming more frequently. So there's all of that. And I guess one thing I'll say related to that communication piece is that we are seeing just with town government that communication is becoming more and more and more important. And the more ways we have to communicate, the better off we are. So I think that when we do look at this again, we probably will be talking more about how we communicate and why and what we're trying to say. So not just who does it and when. But so I think what we'll say about this is that we did complete an update of all the appendices, all of that information. The revised plan in its entirety is up on the website with this packet. If the select board is, which I would request, if you do approve this revision tonight, we can get it put up under the EOP section of the website officially, and just get this out there for our annual update. And then we can have that discussion for the tabletop and the things Catherine was talking about at a later time when Lee's around. I'm not sick.
So what's been updated is names and dates and who's responsible. So if a staff member has changed position, the right people are in the right places now.
Yep.
So I would take a motion for us to accept the update to the EOP.
So moved.
We have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the updated EOP. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? It's unanimous. And this is one of those things that, as boring as it may be, it is only 37 pages, not 200 and something. Each one of us really should read through this. You'll start to see some things that are repetitive, so you can kind of skip over those, but to be aware, our responsibilities are actually very small. It's basically to approve payments and to try and kind of keep things calm and not have outside people get excited and be where they don't belong, so that all the people who are supposed to be doing things have the ability to do those. It's not like we have to be here feeding people or something, but if
So
that's
as
what's
far as
needed.
The training classes, that's something we're gonna coordinate to all do together.
I'd like to, yeah. Yep, I think that we can make that happen.
We've done trainings in the past, like in Augusta at the city hall.
Yeah, we've done, I think the last one I went to was the county headquarters or the county EMA office.
I
But
can't
yeah,
remember what we went for, but Ralph and I went and someone else, and so they had
How
it for
long-
multiple towns.
How long is the training?
I think it's usually an hour and a half.
I would much rather it was an evening.
Oh, it will be
Yeah.
an
Than
evening.
a Saturday or Sunday.
Okay, good. Well, yeah, what I'll try to do is I'll try to get
That's my
the
preference.
county to host something here, and we can invite other towns. Or we can do it in Winthrop, or we'll find a way to make it so that it's convenient for everybody. And I do want to point out also that we did work with staff, so we updated not only the names in the document, but the appendices as well. We updated the business listings that we have available. Again, we can't, go and pull people and force them to give us their information, but we have pulled what we have, updated what we have, and also the call down list for emergency, for the folks that might need emergency assistance. So that's been updated as well. We went through and checked all the supplies, went through the supply closets, checked our inventories. So that's all part of this annual review so that we know that we're ready.
Okay, we are still just 8 minutes ahead of schedule, but that's okay. We're doing great. So new business, item 24-075, discuss initial capital investment planning priorities. We have 20 minutes set aside for this. And this will be Eric.
Okay, so I included a couple of documents here. I will say these are all in draft form. The first is the FY24 estimated reserve balances. This shows an estimate of starting with an estimate of what we finished with at the end of the last fiscal year, June of 2023. So those are the estimated balances. Until we have the audit completed, we can't guarantee that those are factual. They should be pretty close, but until we've gotten and had a solid discussion with the auditors about that, and you know, what payments. I mean, Steve walked into the office today, and Teresa and I were talking to the auditor about, you know, the 500,000 we spent on Church Road for the paving project, and how much of that was for shoulder work, and how much of it was for paving, and whether or not that last payment should be under this year's budget or last year's. Those type of things have to be sorted out. So I just wanted to point out that this is a best guess. Then what we're doing right now is saying, well, moving forward, what we think we're going to have that's going to be coming out and going in during this current fiscal year, which we're not even halfway through yet. So I just want to make the point that we're doing the best we can with these numbers, but the certainty really isn't there and really won't be there until you know, February, March, and even then, there's still some things that could change if there was an unexpected expenditure. But this does give you a rough idea of what's in those reserve accounts. This structure is going to change a little bit when we start looking at the budget in more detail in January, but it gives you an idea of where things are and where we can start with our budgeting for the next fiscal year. So that farthest column on the right is really generally within probably 10 or 20% of where these balances will be. So you can see that, you know, some accounts, you know, were drawn down significantly. Fire department reserve was one, and we want to think about, you know, how we want to repopulate that. And if we do, the open space reserve, we're up over $100,000 in there. You know, I do think that there's opportunity to use some of that perhaps for the ball fields, but we'll have to talk about that. But we can't really talk about it unless we know where things are. So that's what this first spreadsheet does. And as you can see, we've got, you know, $1.2 million approximately estimated at the end of the fiscal year. So this is really a big portion of our general fund, but it's allocated, it's designated funds. Again, with the budget, we talk about designated funds and undesignated funds. These are squarely in the designated fund categories. The next sheet, and you know, you can jump in with questions anytime really, but I'll just run through this quickly. This next sheet is our scheduled expenditures for FY25, the coming fiscal year. The FY24 column shows things that we budgeted for or expect to spend. Some things may or may not be. One area that I'm talking with the staff right now about that's in here partially is the idea of swapping out trucks. If we do that, we're likely probably going to get, you know, 50,000 plus for the trade-in, but the chassis straight up would probably cost us 60. Then we have to have it upfitted. So there's a chunk there that we have to figure out, if that happens, where it might come from, and whether or not we want to finance that or whether we want to just pull out of reserve. So, but the column you want to look at probably most closely would be the FY25. That's in green. And you can see some of the big projects that we're thinking about. There is some routine savings being proposed. Reserves show up in a few different spaces. But one other column I want to point out is if you go back to the left, a few columns from that green one, I have added a column this year for estimated tax impact. That's because we had some confusion in the past about, well, what does something cost versus what is it going to cost in any given year? For example, the fire truck that we purchased last year, the cost was estimated at a flat 600,000. It turned out to be a little bit more than that. But the tax impact really on an annual basis is much less than that. It's like 30 or 40,000. I can't remember what the payment is on that. But that's a way for us to maybe differentiate and be a bit more clear about what things are going to cost out of pocket versus what the overall cost is. So trying to make this a little bit more useful of a tool. It's still cumbersome. It's still hard to follow, but the big items that you see here are coming in with the idea of doing something with a structure at the transfer station, the idea of doing $300,000 in maintenance paving. That's up from 275. we really are seeing those costs continue to rise, and I don't want to get caught short. So I'm initially thinking that we'll probably have something very similar or more than what we had last year. And that's kind of what this is. It's a scoping exercise. It gives the board the chance to look through and see, am I missing something? Is the town missing something? What's coming up next? And are we doing this stuff intelligently and planning intelligently? And of course, the fairgrounds is an interesting one. That shows as a cost of potentially $750,000, but the tax impact for the capital side is zero. And that's another reason why it's important to show those differences. And that's kind of a summary of what we've got going on. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I think that the board should spend some time talking amongst yourselves about those priorities, what's on there, and what you might like to see on or taken off.
I'll just open it up for people to speak.
I have a bunch of questions unless someone wants to go first. One thing I noticed with the estimated balance is there's quite a hefty balance on a lot of things, which is nice. I mean, it looks like not too many of them are like zero or like super low. So I thought that was encouraging. I still see that $190,000 ARPA balance sitting there. And I keep asking this, what does that expire? 24?
2026, December
Okay.
2026. So we have some time. However, I do think it's important that the board look at spending that. I'd say spend it out of this year's budget. You've got some big things coming up. You've got some projects that could really use some help. And I'd recommend that we not push that to the last possible year. I'd like to see it started being spent, because oftentimes these projects, we budget for it in 25 and it might span from 25 into 26. So I'm glad you brought that up, Carol. And I hope that the board looks carefully at how to spend that money.
But that has a lot of strings attached, like a lot of,
Not a lot.
Zero at this point.
oh, what?
It did before.
It did before. It used to have a lot of
Seriously?
strings. So it used to be that we could only use it for certain kinds of capital projects, but the government, the federal government, realized that that was not practical. So their final rules that came out last year basically said, if you use this for a governmental purpose and you're spending less than $10 million of federal funds, you can use it for generally anything you want. The only string that is attached that I'm aware of right now is that it can't be used for matching for certain things, like the fairgrounds project, unfortunately. But it still could be used for that project. It just wouldn't count towards a match. But it could be used for supplementing the salt sand shed if that comes in high. It could be used for a portion of our piece of a canopy at the transfer station if we decide to do that. So there's some big projects that it could go for. It could go all towards helping to offset the cost of paving. So those are all things, or the sidewalk, all things that it could be used for.
That's good news. I did not know that. One thing I thought was larger than I expected was the balance of attorney fees. After going through what we've gone through the last few years, I'm surprised it hasn't been more.
Well, so the reason is,
We overfunded it for 2 years or
Okay.
three years, I think.
Yep.
At much more than we normally would, because we didn't know what was going to
Right.
happen. And now we have a better feeling, and I'm thinking that's a place we can change some of that, right?
absolutely. In the past, I mean, the last 3 years or 2 years at least, we've been putting in, I think it went from 15 to 20 to $25,000. And we have built up a healthy balance. So I think it's wise to probably maintain, and this is something I'm working on for the board and for the boards and committees, is a policy for each of those reserves that says, here's a recommended maximum and here's a recommended minimum. So you can see that range and see, well, are we higher or lower than we ought to be? How much can we pull out? I think that the legal fees probably would be appropriate at like a $20,000 to $25,000 reserve. That would handle most any normal frivolous lawsuit, right? But we weren't dealing with any normal situation when we put that $50,000 away. But we could probably do something like pull $10,000 or $20,000 out of that or $15,000 out of that over the next 2 or 3 years and be okay. And I hope we consider something like that to draw that down and reduce the tax impact.
So
Yeah.
that's what I was getting at. So we don't have to spend it on attorney's fees, even though it's in that category.
But what we could do is just not budget tax
Additional.
dollars for attorney's fees. So instead of adding $15,000, we would say, we're gonna pull $15,000 out of that reserve. And that
Okay.
makes the net impact to the taxpayer $15,000 less.
Okay.
Okay.
Otherwise, it would have to be a warrant article to change the reserve amount, right?
Not necessarily, no.
Okay.
I think that and that's part of the new accounting is once that money is in there, it's there to be used for whatever purpose, you'd like it to be used for. But if you're going to plan on spending it to offset taxes, it definitely needs to be part of a warrant article saying, here are it's the use of fund balance article, right?
Okay.
So which committee decides what happens with that pile? Is that budget?
That's,
Is it-
it's primarily the select board, but the budget committee makes recommendations on that.
Great. They'll make recommendations and then we'll deliberate and decide if we agree or we want something different.
Okay, I think it was the next page. It says East Readfield Cemetery Road to build that. Is that a new street or something?
Yeah, but not really. It's a cemetery road. So the East Readfield Cemetery has a lot of open area, but in order to have access without going over graves, you have to have those access roads. And so that was one of those little things that we haven't built out to capacity yet, but we're getting close to needing to build a new road in the cemetery so that we can have access to the new lots.
Okay.
And the
Um,
East Readfield Cemetery, that's at the Plains Road?
That's the Plains Road. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Jesse Lee Church. Yep.
Okay.
Okay. And then the second part down on the second page, the library's second floor and the egress, it has 2024 as 75,000. Why do we have 75,000 and
We've already
24?
spent it.
Right.
This is 24.
Oh, that's right.
Yep.
So the fiscal
yeah.
year
That's right.
is the year it ends in.
Gotcha.
And
that
that's,
makes
that's a
So
rough number.
the white column to the left of the green is what we've already requested and town meeting has approved.
Thank you. Okay, and then. Yeah, and then it was like the athletic fields, the 750,000, but we're not putting on the warrant to fund it from the taxpayers, right? So that's just there as
Yeah,
a,
but it will likely show up as a $750,000 expense because it will be run through our books. So we
Okay.
want people to be aware that that's the cost of it. It's important too, when you think about it, long-term, you want people to be aware that this is an investment in a large asset. So I would hope that they would support it, knowing that the money that's paying for it initially is going to be coming out of donations and grants. But it's important for people to know that, hey, we're adding to the overall, overhead that the town has that we have to maintain. So it likely will, I mean, I'm still trying to finalize the final warrant language for all kinds of articles like this with the auditors. But if we're going to be spending the money out of the town accounts, it probably ought to show up, and it probably ought to show up with those, the offsetting revenue also in the same article. So.
okay. Now with the next, at the bottom of the page, road and infrastructure, excuse me. Readfield corner parking, that's at the Masonic Hall, 50,000. So, is that already done?
No, that's
No.
not. And that was one of the ones that I think was talked about. And that's a revised kind of estimate of what it might cost. But I think that is actually better off being done as part of our downtown planning that I'd like to see happen in the next couple of years. So as we're starting to think about the sidewalk and the on-street parking there, and as we're starting to talk about the potential for working with DOT to put on-street parking on Route 17, that's the time when I think we should be talking about that project. So even though we had allocated money for it, it was only 25,000. I think it's best to just hold off on that, but I wanted to flag it as something that's increased in cost
Okay,
relative to, yeah.
now it's at 50,000 though, right? It
Yep.
looks like
Well, because we already had 25 in the
plus
account.
another 25, okay.
So I just want to finish with that because it's a great point. So if we're not doing that, because we have no plans right now to do that this year, that 50,000 will end up in the roads reserve account.
Well, and that's where these things are a little bit tricky, because that number on the left is what I was, I guess, thinking it would cost if we did it this year. But I think realistically, what I should be doing is changing the cost horizon for that so that it shows further down. But to answer your question, the $25,000 that we had allocated for that is still in the reserve.
But it's in the roads reserve.
In the roads reserve, yes. And
Okay.
it won't come out unless we move it.
Yep, so I think that's a good one based on the conversation to move over to the right somewhere.
Mhm.
Yeah, I agree, 100%.
Maybe 26 or 7. And then on that, and I think I've asked before, are the businesses there included in the discussion, like the corner store and the Masonic Hall and all that? Is this like gonna be like the Church Road where we go, hey, this is a proposal, and just let people that it might impact know or have some input?
Yeah, well, and
on it?
actually, I mean, that's how it started. I mean, this came it came originally from the Age Friendly Committee, but we met multiple times on the corner with the owner of the store. I guess it wasn't the owner, it's the gentleman that I'm trying to remember his
Ray?
name. Ray, yeah, I should remember his name. Ray, we met with Ray, we met with the postmaster at the time. We met with I think even Cammy, or the person that owned the building before
Okay.
her. Ed Dodge was there.
Okay,
And we talked about it, and everybody was really in favor of it for a number of reasons. But it doesn't mean that that's how it needs to end. But yeah, absolutely, it will be an inclusive process that talks to folks that are affected.
okay,
I think the discussion we've had, and I'm not sure whom I've had it with or where. With the revisions proposed to the Church Street sidewalk, putting parking up on the Union Meeting House side, that's going to create more parking for downtown. And if that sidewalk project goes through and you have traffic slowing and you have more people walking safely instead of now they're walking in the shoulder or on the road, hopefully there will be a little bit more activity in the corner area.
Yeah.
And the whole corner area on Main Street is probably not ideal. And so rather than just considering the area in front of the post office, maybe we should consider all 4 corners and have the discussion about what's the best way to do that and where should parking on Main Street be, like down in front of your house? Do people park on that side? Do they park on the fire station side? Should there only be parking on one or the other? It's a state road, so we can't really control it, but we can try to designate areas. It doesn't make them legal, but.
Yeah, well, and we can work with the DOT to make it legal, and they actually have, DOT over the last decade or so has been moving more towards thinking about roads like Route 17 that cut our town right down the middle, in all of our villages. Working more with the towns to make sure that we're planning and thinking about those things in a way that is responsive to what the town wants, and not just, well, this is an arterial, we don't care what you're doing on either side, we're just moving traffic. And so they've been much more proactive about that, and there are grant funds available. I actually met with somebody last year to talk about that. And if we put in some planning funds and get some design work done, again, I think it should happen later, but if we do, DOT will help cover the cost of some of that construction, so.
okay.
So that's all really good. So, but probably, I mean, we need to wait and see what happens with the sidewalk to see how the next step goes.
Yeah.
So that one's probably not gonna be, well, we talked about moving that over. At the very bottom, Guile Road Bridge replaced with pedestrian bridge. Is that for real? 26? the little thing that everybody's talking about when they're going to, not everybody's talking about, but enough people have mentioned it, and you know who's top of the list.
Oh, yeah, no, I think that, this is a can, and we've kicked it since I started with the town 8 years ago. And so what I like to do is keep it just out of reach, a year or two ahead, but really,
So it's gonna be another library building project.
we need to,
There's a
decide what we
liability,
want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
there's a
Okay.
liability there in some form. If something disastrous happens there. And we don't really need to find out what that is by something happening before we take action and are responsible. And it's been longer than since Eric's been here. That road's been closed for
Oh, yeah.
many
yeah.
more years.
Yeah.
And I mean, we took one really good step this year. We renamed it, right? So it's one name on this side of the bridge and,
Oh, really?
yeah,
Yeah. I
it's
didn't
Guile
notice that.
Road on the other side.
It's Crag Mill Drive on the 17th side.
Been almost
Hi,
20 years now.
Mill Drive.
It's the name of a family that had a mill in that
Oh,
location.
That's very nice.
So
Is there a sign that says
it's
that?
like
There is.
Craigie.
Man, I've got
It's
it.
been
Just a
20
little-
years it's been closed now.
Yeah, it's been
Quite
closed
20
down a long time. I think it just hadn't been a big topic of discussion, but I remember one of the first budget committee capital planning meetings I had. People were like, yep, we need to get on that. Let's do it. Let's get it sorted out. And then it's just been stagnant.
Well, we
Um,
had some estimates at different times and I think the civil engineers looked at it.
Yeah,
and-
students from UMaine. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And, you know, different ways to replace it. And so,
125,000 for that little bitty thing, and we're doing all of Church Road for,
well, you have to take out what's there and it's over water.
right.
So you can't,
DEP
Drop
gets-
anything
Just
in
blow
it.
up.
Yep. Yep. So I think that's probably close, but,
Well, it could.
okay, now we're back to the liability discussion.
park that town truck on it.
You can just park the town, oh, that's a good way to do
2
it.
for 1.
But
That's,
no,
oh, and I had one
Yeah.
more thing, I'm very sorry.
You don't have
And
to
then,
be
and this
sorry.
is it. Maintenance. So I see like a 2020 pickup lease, 2016 pickup lease,
Yep.
Bobcat lease. Somebody said once before that the town used to own everything and maintain it.
Mm.
Are we doing more leases now than like just flat out buying it and
They're-
maintaining it and?
They're not actually leases, they're lease purchase. Correct?
yeah, it's a lease purchase. So basically it allows us to pay for it over 3 or 4
Oh, oh, oh.
years instead of just, bonding or paying cash all at once.
Oh. okay.
Yeah, and we do, we own the equipment outright. I mean,
Okay.
technically the bank owns it for those years that we're making payments, but we own it and we maintain it and we stick very closely to the schedules and the staff's very
Okay.
diligent about making sure that it gets the
So it's kind
attention
of,
that it needs.
yeah, it's kind of like having a vehicle loan, but
Yeah,
it's called a lease
you're paying
purchase.
to own it,
Right.
like rent to own.
Right.
type version.
Thank
Thank you.
Yeah, and we usually get pretty good rates, 3 to 4% has been what we've seen. We've seen some as low as 2. But it all depends. Municipal rates, banks like to lend us money because we're a really good bet. So,
Thank you.
So I'm a little concerned that the bottom line in the green doesn't include the 750,000. And it's not in the green anywhere.
yeah, and that's, I mean, I can certainly show it there. What I had tried to do was to show the tax impact in the green line
Yep.
because it was confusing. I guess it's 6 of one, half dozen the other. There's drawbacks to doing it either way. One way, it looks like we have inflated actual costs. The other way, it might not be as transparent, but it's on the schedule. So I see what you're saying, yeah.
Well, I go back to just thinking that if we want to spend it, it has to be in the budget.
And it will be on the warrant, absolutely, yeah.
So. Yeah, and I guess one way to do that is somewhere to have a legend that says what each column means. Maybe at the bottom line, like you have some other things noted there. Cost figures are updated periodically. Maybe you could just put a legend of what the columns mean.
Yeah,
Like 2024 is the current year we're operating in. 2025 is the budget year we're considering. So that
Hmm.
novices who are looking at this have a better feeling, because I think most people don't understand that we're in fiscal 2024.
Yeah, easy to understand, easy to do, yeah.
I mean, we understand because we're involved in it, but
You would think.
Yeah.
I lied. I did have another. Under Parks and Recreation, the last two, so we have, and I saw the dates they were done, but then so there's a building, a beach building, and then a beach group picnic activity shelter. And they both say 2026. So are these things we're still considering, things we're still discussing?
Yeah, I think this is what we're considering and discussing. I think the reason I put some of these things in 2026 is because the board has flagged recreational resources as priority, but also said we need to finish what we've started first.
Okay.
So that's the mindset there. Doesn't mean it has to stay there or it's the right spot. That's just where we put it, or I put it, to make sure that it was still in our minds, but not pulling resources that are more appropriately directed towards things like the fairgrounds, the sidewalk, those type of things that we're already in the middle of, the library.
So it's just future projection stuff.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
think it might be helpful where it says build on several items to maybe say build new.
Right.
I mean, I get that that's, when you look at it long enough, you can see that replace means, okay, something's already there, so this is going in its place. And we should be able to tell by the dates, but anyway, just a suggestion. In the transparency for the public to read, I think it's helpful. Okay, Carol, that's good. Anybody else have anything they want to ask? Do we feel comfortable with this, looking at these numbers going across? We're at 571 essentially, then 724, 573, 611, 561. I mean, those are pretty stable numbers. It's not like we're jumping up by 500,000 or down by that in a year. There's some variance. The idea being that we're trying to keep this as level as possible so that we don't have spikes for taxpayers. We are meeting with the budget committee to discuss the capital plan, I believe, at the end of January. It's on the schedule, so
Yeah.
just remember that we've looked at this once when we get to that. All right, I'll move us on to consider 24076, a draft disposition of tax acquired property ordinance.
Yeah, January 31st is the joint meeting.
That's a Wednesday, okay.
Yeah, sorry. So the disposition of tax acquired property. At first, I wasn't certain I would be able to make much use of our existing policy. But I did look more closely at the state statute, looked very closely at the state statute, and saw that really the change was more to just the sale process for tax acquired property, and the work leading up to and following that isn't really addressed to any great degree in state statute. So where it is, it's been reflected, but I do think that this approach is workable, and I'm looking for some select board feedback on the general provisions before I bring it to legal review, because the legal review is costly, but of course, really important. But I wanted to use that policy as a backdrop because I think it is familiar. It's familiar to the board and familiar to the public, anybody that has looked at it. So the big changes here are that when the town acquires property, we have a special process we have to go through to sell it. And no matter what we do when we sell it, we can only keep the money that is owed to us in back taxes plus fees, plus a very small administrative cost that might otherwise be hard to quantify for things like, town manager time, staff time for, processing the liens, all that stuff. But it's really quite simple in the end. We have to give everything else back to the former owner, just like we did with the last property that we acquired So I think that we've actually made great strides, and I credit the board with being, having the foresight to look at this and say that's the right thing to do. Now it's the state law that it's the thing to do, whether it's right or not. But we're in a good position. Our process can mesh with this pretty well, and there are only a few changes needed. But there are some decision points in there that the board should be aware of. And one thing that I want to point out also about the schedule is because there's a burden to carrying and holding onto a piece of property. What I did was tried to make this so that when we send out our normal notification for the redemption period, so after the property is foreclosed on, there's usually 30 days where you can say, all right, pay your back taxes, pay, whatever else we have for fees, and you can get it back. There's no issue. We can issue a deed, or we might even not even file the actual lien. So there's a window there that we can take care of things more easily and more quickly. One of the provisions of state law says that you have to give people 90 days notice if you intend to sell. And so what I've done is suggested that when we send that notice about your property's been foreclosed, you have 30 days to redeem it. We also say, and by the way, this is your notice that we're going to sell this in 90 days if we don't sort this process out. And I think it's a good thing because the 30-day period, the way I've got this drafted, folks can avoid having to pay the administrative fee. So we can give them a little bit of an incentive to say, well, we're not going to be having to hold on to this, insure this property, keep an eye on it, send maintenance out to check, make sure no one's broken in, make sure there's not possums in the back, that type of stuff. If that happens in a shorter amount of time, there's a value there. And the resident gets the property back, it gets a lot simpler. But if that doesn't happen, we then only have to hold on to it for 60 more days after the end of that period. So things are condensed. It's an unfortunate thing. It doesn't happen often. We work very hard to make sure it doesn't. But if it does, I think this policy gives us the best position to make sure that the property owner gets what they're owed with their any sale proceeds, and the town's made whole by having our costs covered. So that's really what this does. And ultimately, it's not that much different than what we used to do, except there's more pieces of it that are mandated by state law. So.
I like that it took out a lot of choices that the select board had as options. Because we didn't really want to use those anymore. So that's good. And there's a lot of reference to the applicable state law. I think that's really good.
Yep.
It satisfies a lot of the questions that people have. Well, why are you doing this? Well, because here's the law. So take it to your lawyer, take it to a neighbor, somebody who can help you understand it, but this is why we're doing this, because we have to. I don't know enough about the legal aspects of this to make any qualified statement about whether it's correct or not, but it looks like all of the changes you made are reasonable and seem to follow our discussions as well as what we've heard about from state law. So for me, it's good to send it to legal for review, and I assume they will catch things that may be contradictory.
Yeah, no, I think that'd be a great motion.
I have one
Yep.
question just to clarify Article 4.4.1, where it talks about property listed for sale with the real estate broker who does not hold an elected or appointed office.
Right.
Is that including committees?
Yes.
Yes, so that's state law.
So
Yep.
less, what about Brandon and his wife? I know he's on,
I mean, his
And-
wife's the realtor, so
So
she could absolutely do that.
she
yeah.
can, that's what
Yeah,
I was wondering.
Right.
And so
It's
could
not
somebody else in
spouses.
Les's office, for example.
That's what I was wondering.
But the idea is nepotism. We want to avoid even the perception of a conflict of interest, and we've been through that. And I actually appreciate this piece of state law because it makes it very clear, very straightforward. We don't want any perception of a conflict of interest.
And that's any appointed office. So you could be on the Trails Committee
Yep.
And that means you can't
That's what I
do
was
it.
wondering.
But
It's-
it only
and
extends to that appointee, not to family members,
Thank you.
not to, yeah.
Right.
Otherwise, it was too late for Brandon to, you know it.
Can
Just
we have a motion to ask Eric to have legal review done on this? And not a so moved, please. It needs to be a little more detailed, is what I'm getting at.
I'll make a motion to have Eric work with legal to review our disposition of tax acquired property ordinance.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? It is unanimous. We are still moving along. Thank you to everybody. We're having great discussion, but also getting things done. Item 24077, consider a process for the town manager annual review. I must admit, I didn't actually read this one, Eric. Did it include the thing we talked about?
Well, no, it doesn't specifically. So this is the same as
Okay.
last year's.
Just
You
say it
you didn't
looked-
have
just
to
Looked
read
like
that.
the same.
Um,
Yeah.
Okay.
the
That's what I
one
thought.
change that I will note is that I did do a mock-up of the questions that we normally send people in writing with the Survey Monkey, the online survey tool. So that way people can do anonymous online responses that should give a bit higher uptake and a bit more participation. And we can just, Catherine can have access to that. She had some when we first started doing survey work for the comp plan, so I can give that back to her. And she could manage that piece of it on behalf of the select board. But the rest of it, I think, can and probably should be identical unless the board has changes you'd like to make as far as how that process went. Looking at talking to staff, talking to vendors, talking to board and committee chairs, and talking to the general public about my performance, so.
So all of that feedback would be done on SurveyMonkey.
Yep,
So we wouldn't be sending out mailings to any of these people. We'd be sending out electronic
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I mean,
notifications.
just
Well-
handwriting.
It is wonderful in one sense, except that I want to make sure we hear from people who don't do the computer stuff very much. You
Well,
know, I mean,
yes, so we
I
could.
did the public one last time and I thought
Yep.
there were some really well-written letters and thoughtful comments from people that wrote it out. And clearly, I think would be comfortable doing it that way. I think we need to pay
So,
attention to that also. That's
I
all.
think for members of the public, we can have it be both ways, but I think for anybody who is official, like a vendor, a committee chair, an employee, I think they should all do it online. They all have access to online. It's all part of their job.
That makes sense. to me.
So there's no inability of people to be able to do it that way.
so I think the intent
And-
was
but
to
I-
have that
but-
be additive, not a substitute.
Yeah,
yeah.
but definitely for the public, let's make it known that comments can be put onto SurveyMonkey or
Give that to
brought
Steve.
or mailed. Yeah. So do we need to divide this up, or do you want me just to get the compilation out to everybody?
No, I think you should divide it up. I think each section you could send them the results and then whoever
Okay.
volunteers for what, because I think that's an important process than you just telling us, well, here's all the results from SurveyMonkey.
Well, because then who's gonna talk about it?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
you want someone to talk about it. You also want someone to digest it so that it's an aggregate and it's like a double blind. So you get the anonymous comments. Except with the public, though, we want to remind people that we encourage them and there's more weight put on, much more weight put on comments that have names associated with them. I don't see them, but the select board would. But the idea is that you aggregate that so that the feedback I get is really truly anonymous.
So what we need to do here is have each of the four of you, not including me, because I'll oversee it and I'll divide it up and give it to you. The results that we get in. Everybody needs to choose a component: employees, boards, committees and commissions, major vendors and partners, and the public.
Well, I would like to choose employees this year. If anybody cares.
And I'd like to do the public if I can, but
Well, we'll see if
I'm
these
not-
two want to fight you guys for those.
well, I'm not like all feisty about doing any one particular, but I like doing that.
I wanted to do something different.
I'll take the major vendors and
partners.
Would that include
At least boards and committee chairs.
contractors?
I'm,
Major vendor.
Yeah.
it would be part of that, yes,
That
if
would
they
be
choose
great.
to reply. These are people that we currently do business with. Right. So that would leave board and committee chairs for your part, Carol, is that all right?
Say again?
That would leave the boards and committees for you. Is that all right?
Or do you want the other one?
Maybe I'm looking at the wrong list.
We're on page 41 at the bottom, 4 components.
Oh, yes, I was looking up above to a really long list. Okay, yeah, sure.
Okay. So Eric, how are we going to let all of these, okay,
Typically, you would send out an email to Teresa saying, hey, Teresa, I need some vendor names that Eric works with, or hey, Teresa, or hey, Kristen, I need
so that's fine.
a list of email for board and committee chair people, things like that. So I usually, normally I'd be in the middle of that, but it's me, so I'm not. So you would be the one to, as Bruce did, send that information request out.
Okay.
And then I will help, or Angelica can help with the publicizing that and things like that.
Okay,
And when is that?
so
Come
we
about.
haven't set a date yet, so we're gonna do that now. We try to have this done, I think we tried for the end of January. Is that what we were looking at?
Yeah, I'd like to get it wrapped up and have the
whichever.
executive session at the second meeting in January.
So that's coming right up.
30,
20.
It gives us about 6 weeks total
Something.
time,
I thought it was, why did I think it was way later in the year, but, okay, never mind.
because we have not been doing things on schedule,
Okay.
and now we're trying to.
It's like we just did this. Okay.
22nd.
It probably was early spring last
Okay.
year, but I think we're trying to line everything up, including, the employee contracts, employee reviews, so that everybody gets their stuff done in December, January, so we can then
We can budget for
budget for it.
what it's actually going to be.
So that would be the 22nd.
There we go. Yep.
So we would want the information back by the 11th, and today is the 11th. So if I can get those things sent out this week, that gives people over vacation times. Not everybody closes for vacation. Okay.
January 11th.
So I'll be looking for the survey to close in time, well, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, probably by January 7th,
Wow, why?
so that I can give the results out to us for an executive session on the 11th. Aren't we gonna do 2 executive sessions? I mean, on the 8th.
So if it's due on the 22nd,
If we're gonna have an executive session on the 22nd, when do you want the information by? Or are we gonna do 2 executive sessions?
So there's 2 ways to do it. You can either do 2 separate executive sessions, or what I think you've done as a matter of expediency is to
Make them
have
stand
one
alone.
session where it's just the board talking about the results that have been compiled. And then you meet with me and talk about it. Yeah. So I think that if
Okay.
you had them like in early part of the week before,
Right.
and then you digested them and then met, you know what I mean?
So I'm gonna do it from the back end. If we do a joint meeting, well, if we do 2 meetings back to back, it would have to be 5:30. So from 5:30 to 6, we would meet, just the 5 of us, to do our employee review. And then from 6 to 6:30, we would meet with our employee, which is the town manager, to discuss our review and have input from the employee. If we can't have all of us here from 5:30 to 6:30, then we should do it on 2 separate meetings, meeting at 6 one week and at 6 the following meeting. So I guess I'm asking on the 22nd, can everybody be here for 5:30?
What day of the week is that?
Monday?
Monday again?
22nd
Sure.
of January.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so then let's have the Survey Monkey close on the 12th of January. And then that way you can have the information to look at for a week approximately. Does that work for everybody?
On the 12th?
And Angelica can help with a public notice, so that
Right.
it's not just Survey Monkey notice.
Right, so we can
In that
include any,
period of time for
Yeah.
Steve.
So somehow they were given, it looked like everybody had the same envelope. The comments that I got mailed in from the public, did we send out a mailing? How did that happen? How did we get?
was there a
public to
form that
know?
we put out that people could fill in?
There was clearly a
from the
form.
public?
Yeah, I don't know. I wasn't, I wasn't involved.
Okay, so I guess tomorrow I will also ask Teresa, Angelica, and Kristen.
They'll, between the three of them, they'll have it down. Yep.
Someone will know what was sent,
Someone
and if
will
nothing
know.
was sent, we will have something available.
Well, it sure looked like it. I mean, but based on what I got back,
Yep,
looked like. it
Well, you
was a
guys never
form.
fill that thing out
yeah.
anyway.
So you did the public last time,
Yes.
But you
Okay.
should.
I did vendors last time.
okay.
So just so I know how this works, are we solely going on information from the survey? Is that how we're doing it?
Yes,
Okay. I just
and
wanted-
then we take on that piece of it. And then what we'll do in executive session is each one of us will take 2 or 3 minutes for whatever, you can't really spend 5 because that'll go over our half hour, but
and just report on that.
just report out on that section. In general, one vendor said there was an issue with,
Right.
or
Okay.
I only got one response
I
from
just wanted to make
vendors.
sure I
or-
wasn't supposed to contact all the.
Nope, nope,
Yeah, no, Teresa will give you a short list of like 4 or 5 people and then you see who responds, but.
right, and I will email all of those folks, and then I can let you know who I sent it to, and then you'll see who you get back.
All right.
Does that work?
That works great. Yeah, and I do think it's important to note that, these pieces of feedback are just part of it. A big part of this is how the board feels things are going and what your observations and perspectives are. So it's not that you're trying to substitute your judgment for what these other people think. You're digesting all that and there's a fair bit of that too.
It's the realization that Eric doesn't just interact with us to run the town. He interacts with these other people. And if he's being a good citizen or a poor citizen out in the public world, that's an important piece for his job performance. Okay, moving on. 24-078, consider a consent agreement for map 136, lot 27. This is the conclusion of something that we've discussed in executive session once, and I don't know, I guess now it's public because it's in the packet.
Yeah, it's a resolution, and so these type of consent agreements, I could technically sign it, but I don't really feel comfortable doing that. I think the best thing is to have the select board review these things so you know what's going on with it. The purpose here is to just keep the town whole. I think we're actually, we've probably put out more in financial resources than we're getting back on this one, but that's okay. This was a negotiated agreement with the property owner. I think it took a long time, but I'm glad that we have a committed firm date for payment. And I'm glad that the nuisance that was created that had such a negative impact on the neighbor is being resolved and there is progress happening already. But we have dates certain, multiple dates certain, where this stuff will be resolved. We did have a court date that was originally scheduled for December 6th to deal with this, but we got this in hand. We're able to defer that. So we have a placeholder somewhere in April if this falls through. But I think that this is a good resolution. I'm glad that the neighbor got some relief. So.
I take it if the terms are satisfied prior to the dates noted, that we will dismiss the pending enforcement action once everything has been settled?
Exactly. That's just how it works. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But if it's after the last ending date of April 1st, then we proceed with legal action?
Yep.
Okay, and there's no more consent agreement at that time?
No, and I've made it very clear that, I think it's been made clear through the code officer that this is serious, that we avoided some serious costs and some serious legal action, and that this just needs to be taken care of. So I expect it will.
So we just need to make a motion that we.
Authorize Eric to sign.
You sign it?
You said that
Yes.
perfectly. Go ahead.
It's too late.
I would like to make a motion to authorize Eric to sign this administrative consent agreement. Do I do I say the guy's name?
You can just say that the one that was presented. I mean,
As
part of this,
presented. That's
it's
great.
public. We don't have to make it.
Right.
More
Right, really.
More
I didn't know I
public.
have to do that.
We're
Good.
not
We don't
trying
have to
shame you.
advertise.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
good. That
There's a
works for me, as
Put
presented.
the Lincoln Beacon on it.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second to have the town manager sign the consent agreement as presented in the packet. Is there any further discussion? I'd just like to thank everyone involved, including the property owner, for their cooperation in getting this resolved, even though it was longer than we had hoped it would be. The important thing is that it is getting resolved, and that's a key win for everybody. All those in favor? Unanimous. Okay, is there anything about upcoming agendas? We do need to look at our third quarter meeting calendar to make sure that we are all set. I think those dates are already published on the website. I'm not certain of that. Are they on your new calendar on the wall, Angelica? Okay, so they could be changed. Once it goes on the wall, that's it.
How about the wall behind us? Doesn't that look great?
It does look great.
It's so much better than that little TV. Yeah.
Oh. I did, oh, that's
So
awesome.
that's just a trial run.
Yeah, I love you. You know it's back yet. I love that.
but
I just watch what's in front of me. If I'm up there, I behave.
we're looking.
Eric's up there, doesn't matter.
I would say we're looking at getting
Carol.
one that has a bit more brighter light. But this is a freebie. Bill has been great at working to help us gradually improve our operations. And this is when we get this in place, it's gonna be a huge step forward, so.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So it looks like we are meeting September, this is wider, so we have meetings, a lot of meetings.
3 times in January.
So the 8th, the 22nd, and a joint meeting on the 31st. Note that the 22nd is gonna start at 5:30. In February, it's the 12th, I don't think so, isn't that President's Day?
No, that's 19th.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
So it's the 12th and the 26th. And then in March, it is the 11th, the 25th are regular meetings. The 13th, is that the anticipated school board meeting?
No, that's something else. I can't remember what that one is. The school board meeting is actually the 27th. The 13th, there was something else.
Oh, so that must be the public hearing.
27th of what?
Of
We are in March. Because we're having a public,
Oh,
the
27th.
informational hearing is the one in March,
Yeah,
right?
the joint meeting is on
So
the,
that has to be the
the
13th.
20th. Yeah,
Oh, that's the 20th. Oh,
Yep.
we're meeting 5 times that
I mean,
month.
5 times that.
yeah. The third, I can't remember what the 13th was, but there's something there. I'll find out what that one was.
All right, well, there we go. And while we're just there, please note that April has 2 meetings. May has 4. And is 4 because one of those with the budget committee is specific to the warrant? I mean, to
For,
the sidewalk and fairgrounds?
nope, I mean, those things we talked about, but basically, we used to have one public hearing in May prior
Oh,
to
right.
the vote, but then because we have
Absentee.
absentee voting happening 30 days before the vote, we've had people complaining on both ends saying, well, you did it too late or you did it too soon. And so now we're doing it on both ends, and we're gonna do it before people absentee vote, and then we're gonna do it a week or so before the actual town meeting vote and make everybody happy, except for the
Wow,
select board.
make everybody happy. Yeah, good luck with it.
So it looks like we're meeting twice, no, where are we? Twice in April. Twice in February. Okay, I can't even keep track of this anyway. So March and May are killer months.
Yep.
So there we go. And this is why in the summer, we try to package things together and have one meeting a month when the workload is somewhat smaller to make up for meeting every week. Does anyone have anything else?
On the schedule, we just talked about January 22nd. I will be remote for that executive session. Does that work? will be in Indiana for my daughter to get 4 wisdom teeth pulled, and I don't want my mother to be nursing.
I would prefer not.
That's gonna be our.
Logistically, Eric.
Oh,
how-
we could do the executive session on a separate Zoom
We could.
account. Yeah, we have 2 Zoom accounts, so we can have Bill preloaded with his stuff on one, and we can have the select board executive session happening on another downstairs, and it'll be no problem now that we have bandwidth, better bandwidth. So,
If
So
that's an
Thank you
issue,
for the
I-
advance notice and we will do it then. Nope.
Okay,
But you'll still get your information probably on the 16th from me, from Survey Monkey.
Can we just make sure one of us is host of that, Eric? Because when we had people just popping in the last time we
Yeah,
tried.
no, that was because we were on the same
Okay.
link as
Alright.
the regular meeting, and people joined early, so that was bad news, so
That was
that
bad
won't
news.
happen again.
That won't happen.
We
again.
have several different accounts, or
I just want to
Zoom
make
links,
sure
right.
that's what we use.
yes,
yeah.
and Eric, you will have to set that up for us and then leave.
My pleasure.
Seeing no other business before us, I would take a motion to adjourn.
Oh, I will make that motion.
Second that motion.
I have a motion second to adjourn at 8:30. Look at that. All those in favor?
Just right on.
Carol? Unanimous.
You better vote
If
for
you
that.
want to stay, you're on your own.